really appeals to me when you talk about your sales process, that there's a chance for a person who is not a natural salesperson to become a salesperson. And I think that is huge because that gives actually people like me hope.
I was just kind of resigned to the fact that I'm not a good talker. Because I'm not a good talker, I'm not going to be a great salesperson. I can't close these people, so I'm just going to hire closers, right, to work in my company. But over time, I came to learn that there's an actual process to this, and that the things that make people great, you can break it down to its core fundamentals, right? First principles, if you listen to Elon Musk, and take those first principles and apply it, and then you can actually become a very, very effective salesperson if you actually apply these strategies and tactics in conversations. A lot of the sales training that exists today is based off the old times where we didn't have Google, right? And so the salesperson was the gatekeeper. And so you had to put up with all that abuse from the salesperson if you wanted more information about the product, right? Whereas today, everything is one search away, right? So our sales philosophy is we don't sell people, we get people to sell themselves.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Jack Bosch Show, where we talk about all things real estate, finance, and business building. So with that said, today's guest is a good friend of mine, a real estate expert and sales expert. So today we're going to talk a lot about the power of sales, transitioning from one area in life to another one, leadership, you name it. And our guest is Steve Trang. Hey, Steve, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me back.
Well, I'm glad. Yes, he was actually the second time. He was also part of episode 18. So if you want to watch that, you have two pieces there. We talked more also about sales, but also about real estate. Today, well, we're doing the same thing, but there has been some news in your life that we'll tap into in just a second. So first of all, give us a quick summary again about who you are and what you do.
Steve Trang. I grew up here in Phoenix, Arizona. I have massive shiny object syndrome, which we're going to talk about later on today. But I've bought rentals, flips, wholesales, short sales, listed properties for banks, had a brokerage, did the realtor thing, did the podcast thing. Right now, I'm focused purely on the sales training thing.
All right. So right now, we focus on the sales training. Okay. So with that said, you are known and used to be known for quite a while as one of the top wholesalers here in town.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but let's just jump right into it. But recently, more and more, I've seen you coming up in different organizations and different groups, as speaker and so on, as somebody that really has an expertise in sales. And your approach to sales is a little bit different than many other people, because by nature, I think you're an engineer, right?
Exactly.
So you're taking the engineering route to sales. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we basically reverse engineered sales. We look at the best practices. So growing up, or not even growing up, like when I got into business, when I became a realtor in 2007, I just had this idea, and I think it's a common misconception, is that you just have the gift of gab, right? If you're just a good talker, you're a good salesperson. And so I was just kind of resigned to the fact that I'm not a good talker. Because I'm not a good talker, I'm not going to be a great salesperson. So I just was resigned to this fact. As a matter of fact, I actually hired some pushy salespeople at some point for long stretches because I can't close these people, so I'm just going to hire closers, right, to work at my company. And that works. I mean, it's a profitable model. But over time, I came to learn that there's an actual process to this, and that the things that make people great, you can break it down to its core fundamentals, right? First principles, if you listen to Elon Musk, and take those first principles and apply it, and then you can actually become a very, very effective salesperson if you actually apply these strategies and tactics in your conversations.
Okay, what are some of them? What would one think about when you talk about that?
So one of the most popular ones that we learned recently that I think Chris Voss made kind of popular is mirroring. Mm-hmm. It's just repeating back to the person what they said, and not at just the words, right, but also at an emotional level, at a physical level, mirroring them physically, and then a tonality. So mirroring is one thing that works really, really well. As a matter of fact, it works way too well. You get a lot more bang for the buck if you're good at mirroring than really any other tactic. I think that's one. Setting appropriate expectations. My one thing I could never overcome, because I'm a natural thinker, is I need to think about it. When they told me I needed to think about it, I said, of course you need to think about it. I like to think about it. And because I understood it, the hardest objection to overcome for most salespeople is the objection that you would give yourself. That makes sense to you. How do you overcome something that you believe to be true? So I had to learn how to set appropriate expectations. Hey, Jack, just tell me yes, tell me no. Either way is okay. There's no pressure here. If this doesn't work for you, just tell me no. right? Don't tell me you need to think about it, just tell me no. And so it's a much longer way of saying that, but that's the essence of it. So getting good at, just being assertive versus aggressive. Aggressive is like, I won't take no for an answer. Or assertive is like, hey, just tell me yes, tell me no. Like, if this doesn't work for you, our solution isn't for everybody. And it's that pull away where people will pull you back in. So I think those are two of a lot of things that we do, that we teach.
So for a lot of people, there's a bunch of things I want to unpack here, but for a bunch of people, just the thought that you have to be ballsy in a phone call up from the very beginning and tell people, hey, listen, this may or may not be for you. Mm-hmm. Tell me at the beginning, tell me at the end, just simply yes or no. Don't tell me you got to think about it. Mm-hmm. That is like overwhelming. So,
it is initially.
Exactly. So yes. How do you get somebody to go from, oh my God, I'm afraid of saying no to, I don't know, to my butcher when he wants to sell me an extra half a pound of meat or something like that, to me taking the initiative and being as ballsy and in your face to a complete stranger prospect at the beginning. That's like they freak out. So how do you make them not freak out over that when you train somebody in sales?
Yeah, so we have to talk a lot about like why it feels weird, right? So one of the things is, I think this is a Western thing, is we feel uncomfortable telling people no. We feel guilty, right? So I think that's one of the things. The Western thing.
Is it a Western thing?
It's definitely not an Asian thing.
Right? Well, it depends. The Japanese say no. They have the hardest time saying no. Yeah.
From my experience, seem to me more like Western culture than Eastern. Just in my experience, they're willing to pay a premium for convenience and so on. But I'm talking more like, mainland Asia, I suppose, as well as like Middle Eastern, South Asia, right? Just tell you, they'll just tell you no, right? And they also, the same cultures that love to negotiate as well. Yeah. Right? Yeah, so I think it's more of so there's a lot of guilt that we're wired with if you grow up here, right? Which is, I grew up here. And so I think that's the first thing, is just understand like that guilt is just something that's programmed, right? I think the second thing too is once I have to get in the bought in on the training, right? And our coaching calls, like getting bought in on it. And the way I get bought in on it is like, well, let me ask you this. If I came over to your house and I said this, hey, Jack, look, you're going to want a price for your home. I haven't figured out what I'm going to offer yet. But like, if the price I offer you doesn't work for you, like, would you just feel comfortable telling me no? And like you would like, yeah, if I get to tell you no, then that takes a lot of pressure off of me. And so I got to get it from their perspective that they would feel comfortable if someone was doing that to them. And once they feel comfortable having someone do that to them, now they feel comfortable doing it to other people. And I say too, it's not really like, it's not like a tactic you do somebody, sales not something you do to somebody. But in this instance, I'm talking about like, would you feel comfortable having this conversation with somebody just like someone would have that conversation with you?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was wondering if they're kind of like baby steps, kind of like that.
There's a lot of baby steps.
Can you do that with something simple, like where the stakes are not as high, like, and then you see like the reaction, and then you do it where the stakes are a little higher, and then ultimately you talk about a house that you could make 50 grand on.
Right.
And
so you start off low, right? And so starting off low is just learning the script, right? The framework really is not exact script, but learning the framework. But after you learn the framework, then it's just a lot of role play, right? Yeah. Lots and lots of role play to get the timing right. Because one of the things that we don't really talk about as much as we probably should is the tonality and delivery is so critical. Because if you're coming in as hot, hey Jack, just tell me yes, tell me no. Like what's the problem with that? It's gonna be like it's gonna be a problem. But if I come with curiosity, like hey, if I just tell you, if I make an offer, it doesn't work for you, like, would you be okay just telling me no? Right, if you come in with a curiosity tone, it lands a lot more effectively than like coming in full bore.
Interesting. Very cool. Very cool. Now let's go into what you said. You're addicted to shiny pennies, which obviously because you've done all this kind of different things.
Yeah.
But you've done them all well. So it's like what the people. I don't actually agree with you on that. I think. The most people I know that do shiny penny, they jump from penny to penny to penny without ever reaching any success anywhere. Right. You've actually reached success pretty much in all of it. You're just probably intellectually bored quickly, easily. And so after you mastered one thing, it's like, okay, great. So now what do I do? Let me do the next thing, right?
Yes. And that's what hurts me.
have you found that to be that's exactly where I'm going? Have you found that is that a good plan for your life? Is that something that you regret doing? Is that something you love doing? Is it something you're like, hey, that's just how I am. I'm going to continue doing this, or you wish it would be different?
I wish I were more disciplined, right? I already knew this when I was working in my career, like in engineering. You know, I worked at Honeywell for a couple of internships. Like the first 2 months are exciting. The last 2 months is like, what am I doing here? I worked at Intel. I worked there for 3.5 years, but like the excitement was gone after maybe like 4 months. So all right, this is kind of who I am. At the same time, I wish I was able to focus more, because who knows how deep I can go in any particular well. And that's why I'm excited. I mean, I am going all in at the sales training thing, because it's the first time I've actually said, this is it. There's nothing else. There will be no more distractions. So it's the first time I've ever done that. But yeah.
And actually, I'm very similar. Like I see I have 17 ideas a day, and I think 16 of them are brilliant, and probably in reality only half of one one is halfway decent. But and I want to jump on all of them, and for years I tried to jump on all of them, and as a result, none of them got done.
Right.
And only when we focused really on just one thing, land flipping and land coaching, which it's really two things, but at least you can separate those fairly easily, then were things taking off. I even in the coaching side of things, we had a tax lien course, we had a tax deed course, we had a excess proceeds course, we had a land flipping course. At some point of time, people didn't know what Jack stands for.
Exactly.
So what happened is our live events started going from 200 people to 50 people, because nobody knew, like, what is this about? What is he doing? Like, no, let's and just like
it muddles the message.
It muddles the message, and then once we realized that, we chose to go full in. We decided to kill all those old courses, just focus back in on the original thing, which we have. 95% of our deals are regular land deals anyway. So we focused on that. That's when our business started taking off.
Exactly.
But what I found my shiny penny syndrome to be satisfied by was the diversity in the daily shit show of running a business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
you have
basically,
variety.
just by reaching certain higher levels and having to reinvent yourself and having to reinvent your management style and having to go from being the person running it to now being the person that hires the people who run it, to then being the person who manages the people who run it, and to now being just the face more or less of it, and everyone is run by our team. That provided so much complexity that my itch was satisfied for something new. Because otherwise, exactly the same thing. Once I learned about it, it's like, okay, I'm bored. What do I do now?
Yeah, what's next? One other thing too, on top of like innovating all those things, those areas don't require nearly as much innovation. But the area that requires the most innovation, it appears to be, is the marketing.
Yeah.
The marketing's like more or less like is changing more frequently.
Yeah, to the degree that it's now so much constant change that it's like annoying.
But that's where I'm having a lot of excitement is the ability to be able to innovate the marketing side, right? Where I still get to play with my shiny object syndrome.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So you have done really well as a wholesaler. You have you have done also some fix and flips, right?
Yeah.
You had an educational business around that, right? And all of that you're saying is going away.
Right.
And you made the decision to focus on just one thing, which is become a world-class sales trainer, which you already are, but basically built that side of the business.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a couple different things.
Walk me through that thinking process around that, and what brought you there, and what's going to happen with those other companies.
Well, they're gone.
Okay.
So there's a couple different things. So first, there was some massive identity issues. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. That's the hardest thing to change, is the identity. Because, you know, looking back, like I bought my first property in 2005, right? That was the first flip that let's turn into a rental because the market's changed, to like, well, let's just give it back to the bank, right? But that was the first property I bought, was in 2005. And so I've been doing real estate for a very long time.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Yeah. And so last year, middle to late last year, is when I started having thoughts of like, why am I wholesaling? I'm not passionate about wholesaling, right? Like my passion for real estate has never been there. The joke I've always made is like, I love everything about real estate except for the houses and the people. If we can eliminate the houses and the people element, I would love real estate, right? So I've never really been passionate about real estate, but I do it because A, it's it's easy, it's lucrative, it makes money, and it's a low barrier to entry to get into, right?
Probably a lot of people would probably like fight you on the notion that it's easy, but again, it's easy for you.
Yes, fair, right? And so I have the experience.
Or it's easy after you learned all the things you learned.
After you screw up enough times, yes, right? Yeah. After you lose everything once, it gets easy.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, that's a good point. And so that's the reason why I do it. And so the other thing too is the reason why I do it is that I do teach wholesale, right? So then it's like, well, I'm just gonna stop teaching wholesale, and I can stop teaching wholesale that I don't have to wholesale, because it's a lot harder today than it was before, and there's a lot more work involved than it was before.
So essentially, after years of doing this, you realize that you only wholesale because you teach it in order to stay legit for teaching it, which is honorable. And if you don't want to teach it anymore, you can actually stop doing it.
Right. I'm no longer obligated to do it for two things. A, my own personal identity, but B, like, what's everyone going to say, right? The external thing. So the external validation that no matter how much we say we don't care, there's some degrees of how much we care, right? And so as I was thinking about it, like, well, I teach sales leadership, and neither of those things require actually wholesaling. So end of last year, we stopped marketing that we teach wholesaling, and we just teach sales. And then as I'm going through all this, we have a mutual friend, Jason Medley, who's been in my ear forever about focus, forever. So when I created my vision, there's a book, Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold, who we got to watch speak at Collective Genius.
Yeah.
I went through that book, and as I wrote out my vision, my 3-year plan, if I want to build a $100 million company that I can eventually sell in 3 years, real estate isn't anywhere in that vision. There's no wholesaling, there's no owning properties, there's no teaching people how to acquire real estate. None of it's in there. And once I put that together and I share that with my organization, my wholesale team is like, hey, we're not
in there.
We're not in the vision. I was like, I know. And that's kind of when the unwinding began on the real estate side.
So what happened with all the people that were used to wholesale?
So we actually captured those resources and brought them into the sell side. And what's fascinating, right, because again, we've got amazing peers in the real estate side. We've learned a lot. We got Frank Cava, Eric Brewer, Phil Green. We copy and paste all their systems and processes, right? Amanda Dean. And we bring them all in, and we built a great operation. Not great, a pretty good operation on our wholesaling side. When I brought them over to the education side, the shock and dismay and horror, because we don't have the same thing for like education. We have Family Mastermind, but we don't have like, hey, what CRM are you using? What's your process, this and that? And even though everything translates pretty well, the margins are so much higher on the education side that you don't have to be nearly as crisp in operations. And so when I brought them over, like, oh my God, it's night and day different between what my education side looked like in February versus what it looks like today.
So you put a bunch of systems in place.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Good. What are you using, for example? What kind of CRM? And
CRM, it's Go High Level. It's nothing complicated. So Go High Level. And it's simple now because like we call out of there, we text out of there, we email out of there, we capture the leads out of, like everything is just all in one place. It's pretty incredible for like, I think we're paying $500 a month. It is wildly effective.
Wonderful. And that's really cool. So let's get back into that moment of decision, perhaps.
And I actually had to have like a private, one-on-one consult with David Olds. I don't know if you know David.
I know David, yeah.
Right? So he went through the same exact thing.
Okay.
Right? A year or two ago when he launched Easy REI Closing. So he's like, well, I have this wholesaling business. I have this dispositions training business. And I have this transaction coordination business. One, I can sell later on. The other two are pretty cool. And he had the same exact thought process. And I asked him, like, I remember having like a lengthy conversation with him while my kids were at piano, right? They're inside practice piano. I had a lengthy conversation with him. It's like, walk me through what this process was like. And he's like, it was tough. Like, there were many sleepless nights. Am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? And looking back, it was absolutely the right decision. So that was a helpful nudge for me.
Yeah, makes sense. Was the family full on board?
I think my wife's happy that I'm focused.
Right. I'm sure.
Right. I remember we had a one-on-one intervention one year. It was like October, I think. We were driving back from something, and I was like, "Hey, I was thinking of something," right? And it was just, it didn't have to do with business. It's always like my thoughts are always about business. But I just mentioned like I'm thinking of something. It's just like, you're not allowed to create another LLC between now and end of the year. Instantly, that's what came out.
That's funny. You still built this though in parallel up to a certain level.
Yes.
That the transition is fairly seamless. You don't have to go. You didn't have to put like a whole bunch of money on the sideline in order to have the runway, in order to do it. You did build it as a parallel business that is profitable. So when shutting those down, you can actually pay for the resources, pay for the things, and have a running start basically.
Yeah. It was already running. It was already a profitable business, right? It was just really the biggest thing. And I was sharing this with somebody a few weeks ago. I was like, at 44 years old is when I finally had this epiphany. Is that we actually
perfect midlife crisis age.
Perfect time, right? Is that we have limited resources. We don't behave like we do. But I had this idea, which was wrong, is that I can do all these things really well, right? It's easy. I'm superhuman, right? Even though I've learned from Darren Hardy about focus, I had Larry Yash talking about your attention is your most valuable asset. Like, I've heard these things, but I thought I could do it. I thought like, hey, I have a great implementer over here. I got a great implementer over here. I can do these things. And what you realize after you stop the real estate thing is like, wow, I had so many like distractions. Like, hey, we have a problem over here. You got to admit it, this and that, which isn't on the calendar. Like those things don't show up on the calendar, but it disrupts your flow on your main business. And that's what like, oh my God, I have freed up so much time and I can actually focus more. So when there's a problem, I can give it, or not even when there's a problem, when I'm focused on something, I can give it way more attention, right, and intention than when before I was getting distracted by this meeting or like, hey, we have a problem, hey, seller's doing this, hey, title company's demanding this.
Yeah. And I know exactly what you're talking about because, I mean, we have 3 businesses and it's a constant juggling of them. None of them really gets all of the priority.
Right.
Our coaching business really gets like probably 80% of the attention. But then there's times when our team finds another apartment complex that the coaching business for a few weeks gets 20% of the attention. And that is obviously noticeable in both parts. Even though we have a great team that now runs it, I was able to take 3 months off, and I think during those 3 months I attended 4 meetings.
Yeah.
That's it. So everything else was run by the team. But still, it still is that the real estate doesn't get the full attention it should be because the coaching gets so much, right? So we're still doing deals, of course, in order to stay legit and all thing, and they're nice, profitable, and so on. And I would actually like to. We're in the process of focusing our time more on the actual real estate, a little bit less on the coaching,
right?
But that's a process too. But
I think for me,
I don't think I have made that decision that you have made to basically just like eliminate everything and then just go in on one.
Well, I think you're also in a different season, right? Like you've achieved massive success in both, and that you have more structure and organization and people in place, right?
True. On the coaching side of things, yes. The other ones are very small teams, but still.
But I would say my real estate I was still pretty heavily involved. I didn't have the leadership level at where I needed to be. And I could either continue trying to build it up or just go back and just focus on this one and just kind of let this one, kind of go by the wayside. Like if it was more mature, I would keep it. Yeah. But it wasn't mature.
Did you try to sell it?
No, I didn't try to sell it. I mean, I have the systems in place. I don't know. I wouldn't feel right like selling it the way it is because like there's still going to be lots of questions and people are going to have to, come back to me and ask me this and that. The other thing too that was really hard is, and I didn't realize this, is it took a long time for me to realize like I don't actually have to work 40 hours a week to give myself permission to work less. Like because I still work really hard, but like I can now like leave at like 3 or 4, right? I couldn't just leave at 3 or 4 before. And then the other thing going back to is I get to innovate, and the innovation we're doing here is we're doing more. So we have like lots of clients within Collective Genius. So now something we added, a new layer, is like I am now having quarterly conversations with the business owner. Like, hey, like talk to me what your business is at, and then we can talk about the acquisition team, the dispo team, what their challenges, what their marketing is, or this or that. And so like I get to act like a consultant or a partner at no additional cost, but to be more valuable. And that's something I think like will help me propel and grow the business further.
And by the way, if you guys are listening to this, you don't know what Collective Genius is, it's like a high-level mastermind of real estate investors of all walks of life. Most of them are house flippers or house wholesalers, house flippers. There's a few land people in there. Funny enough, most of them I had taught, and they're like basically second-generation masters now. And then there's a few people as service providers now, I guess, so like sales trainers, but also multifamily and things in there. It's kind of like the top level of real estate investors in the country.
Right.
So if you're interested in that, check out Collective Genius. Tell them Jack said hi, that it's a referral from Jack if you qualify for it. But you got to do like 50 or 100 deals a year in order to qualify it at some of the tiers, and the top tier is even above that, I think.
Right.
So with that said, let's go back into the actual sales strategy. And how do you call your sales strategy? Does it have a name?
So we've been calling the close more sales formula.
The close what?
Close more sales formula.
Okay, close more sales formula.
The whole thing, shiny object syndrome, always thinking about something new, right? So we might evolve. This is something that we're playing with. We're going to test this with some copy, right? But I'm thinking about changing to the objection-proof selling.
Objection-proof selling, yes. I mean, a lot of things in the especially in the education space, they have to have a name. Ours is the land profit generator, right? Or land coaching, or land profits with a dollar sign as the S. It's kind of like we have the cap over there, and it's right here exactly, and so on. So, and again, the philosophy behind is what? What makes you different from other sales trainers out there? Why does yours work so well? We already alluded to it, I think, but I want you to spend a little bit more time on explaining what's special about it.
I appreciate you asking me this, because it's something that I've actually had to spend some time in the last month or two really thinking about how to articulate what our message is. So what we landed on is basically, a lot of the sales training that exists today is based off the old times where we didn't have Google, right? And so the salesperson was the gatekeeper. And so you had to put up with all that abuse from the salesperson if you wanted more information about the product, right? Whereas today, everything is one search away, right? So our sales philosophy is we don't sell people, we get people to sell themselves. So I figure out, what does Jack want, right? We figure out what is the ultimate outcome you desire. And once we figure out exactly what you want, why it's important, what's the consequence, what's the impact, right? How you feel about all this. Once we get all that, I just help you buy that. And if I help you buy that, if I help you buy the outcome that you want, which my product happens to fit within that, right? Helps you accomplish it. Once I help you buy that, there shouldn't be any objections, because you and I discovered together what your ultimate end goal is.
Now, you said a lot of the people that your customers are real estate investors. How do they apply that to the situation of sitting in a kitchen with a seller that wants to sell their house?
Right. So when you're talking about buying someone's house,
isn't it? I mean, I'm not in house market, and most of our land people are not in distress. So like, what does a typical house seller want?
So they want an outcome, right? So if you look at the typical homeowner, right, when you're talking about houses, at least, oftentimes is their life was humming along, right? It was just happening, and then a life event occurs, and once that life event occurs, they're now in a financial situation where they need money now. They don't have money in their bank account, and all their money is locked up inside the home, right, in the equity. So they have to sell the house to get the equity, to get the money, to fix whatever problem that the life event occurred, right? So if you look at it, when we're buying people's houses, the house has nothing to do with it except for the one part where there's money locked up inside the house. That's the only part. Otherwise, beyond that, it's the outcome.
And they don't have the ability to credit the income to get a short, quick loan.
Yeah, they can't get a home equity line of credit or a home equity loan. Oftentimes, if you're in financial distress, your credit card situation is not so great, right? Your credit's not so good. And so that is how they fix their financial distress. So when we're selling you the outcome. And the outcome is like, what's your life going to be? What's the problem today? What's your life going to look like after we buy your house and we put money in your pocket, right? And once we get you emotionally attached to that outcome, now when we negotiate, we're negotiating in the context of helping you accomplish the outcome. So we're selling you this outcome, this dream. We're also selling peace of mind and certainty. You know this is a done deal. Go to bed tonight. This is done, that you're going to get your money in 14 days, 30 days, so that you can finally take care of this and get your life back.
So you train their sales team on how to implement that when they're setting and when they're closing and so on.
Yeah, we teach them how to acquire it. We teach them how to dispo it, and we deal the lead managers on how to sell appointments. Because a lot of people think your appointment setter is like you don't set appointments, and admin can do that. We sell appointments because we get objections, right? When we try to schedule appointments. So we sell appointments. So I teach the lead managers how to sell appointments.
And do you also teach people in other industries?
We do, not a lot, unfortunately. Like that's 2023. Like that was when we started branching out. So we have some people. We have some people in insurance. We had one client was a Yelper, right? Or not Yelper, but they sell Yelp to like businesses. You know. So we have other businesses. But we have not penetrated the way that I would like for us to penetrate, and that's something I am personally responsible for because I am now in charge of our marketing.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Steve Trang goes from wholesaling to being master marketer. Yeah. That's cool. I mean, Michelle always says, my wife Michelle always says, like, I always tell her, you're a world-class marketer. And she's like, no, I'm a finance major. And it's like, yes, you went to college 27 years ago and you studied finance. Do you think you learned perhaps a little bit more about marketing in the last 25 years than you learned about finance in a couple of years in college or in 3-4 years in college? She's like, yeah, could be. So there we go. You got a PhD from real life world in marketing and you're a top marketer. She's like, she has a hard time accepting that.
You understand what actually works.
Yeah,
not theory. I have a book.
That
what actually works.
What actually works, exactly right. Very cool. So what industries are you looking to break into?
So mostly home services, so solar, roofing, windows, whatever. You have to have a conversation with the homeowner because I think that translates the easiest.
Well, yeah.
Maybe at some point we'll get in the cars, but cars is a different dynamic because like cars is more hard close.
Yeah.
So, but right now we're looking primarily at home services. Although I had a conversation last week with somebody, and his wife is a higher up at a tech company, and he used to be a tech sales guy. He's like, Steve, you're a former engineer who actually worked in engineering, who learned how to sell. Why don't you talk to these high tech salespeople? They have much larger budgets. It's like, I'm happy to have the conversation. Let's see where that conversation goes.
All right, guys, if you're in any one of these industries and your sales team needs training, reach out to Steve. How can people get a hold of you?
The best way is on Instagram at steve.trang, steve.trang. You can also find me at stevetrang.com or Disruptors on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. So we have a giveaway. So we have our book that we sell, Objection Handlers, which we sell. We're giving this all away, right? We have a 2-hour training I did with John Burley. We got that.
Good friend of mine, yeah.
We got a script for how we run our appointments, as well as a call review tool that we created because our clients are like, Steve, what are you listening for? And that goes all in my head. So we write out 3 full pages of what I'm listening for in a call review. So that's all available if anyone's interested. So if they
listening to in a what? In
a call review. So like if your guys are
call review. Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay.
So you're talking to a homeowner, right, or a landowner, and like you're listening to like, okay, what did you say here that might have lost us to sale? We have a list of all like the do's and a much longer list of the don'ts, so that you can kind of tally it so you can get better. So if anyone's interested, text script SCRIPT to the number 33777.
All right. Text the word script to 33777. All right. Thank you very much. So with that said, guys, thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Steve, for attending. Thank you, everyone, for watching. As always, give us that 5-star review if you're listening to this on iTunes. Give us the thumbs up. Give us the subscribe button. Share it with your friends if on all the other platforms. And with that said, that's a wrap. See you in the next episode of the Jack Bosch Show. Bye-bye.